Alright, here we go with a look at my Ruger Mark III 2245. In this video I'm going to upgrade the trigger with the Volquartsen Mark II accurization kit, and I'm going to be replacing the magazine disconnect with the Mark II hammer bushing. Set those aside for now. This is going to have to be a fast-paced video to get it all in 15 minutes. You can see I've already withdrawn the magazine from the gun, and let's go ahead and make sure that the chamber is empty, hand on a safe firearm, so let's go ahead and begin. If you have the model that has the removable grips, you're going to have to remove those. I've already taken the screws out to cut down on time. And let's go ahead and take this down then. Nothing Fancy did a video on this. It's what I followed to install mine the first time, but there was a few mistakes that he made in it. He didn't edit them out, and as he redid his, I had to go back and redo mine. Thanks to Nothing Fancy for making the video, because I sure wouldn't have been able to do it without his, but let's see if this helps somebody else. So, what we're going to do first is remove this pin, and there is a little spring leg right here, and you're going to push this spring leg back and then drive this pin out of its place like that. Just go ahead and pull it out, and then a bunch of stuff pops up. That's all fine, it's coming out anyway. And there is a little spring back here right there, and it kind of hooks around this back plating here, and it's kind of a trick to get all this stuff out of here with that in there. Just kind of there we go. A lot of stuff is going to come out. That's all right. So this here is your Mark III hammer, your Mark III magazine disconnect, your magazine disconnect spring, and your Mark III hammer bushing. You don't need any of that, so go ahead and set all of that aside. Let's go ahead and take the sear out. You can see this spring here. We're going to push that forward, and then we're going to drive this pin out. So I got two pins there. Just go ahead and let that stuff set over there. Got one more pin to take out, and then we'll be all disassembled. There is a spring leg right here. You want to push that downward and then drive this pin. This is your Mark III trigger, trigger spring, trigger plunger. You're not going to use any of that, so go ahead and set that with the other stuff that you're not going to use. This is the Mark III sear. You're not going to use that, so go ahead and set that with the other stuff you're not going to use. Stuff you are going to use, your trigger bar here, your safety with detent and spring. Make sure you don't lose those. This is your sear spring, and you have 3 pins. Let's go ahead and pull our Volquartsen stuff out here. This here is the Mark III magazine, or this here is the Mark III bolt release, not for the 2245, so we're not going to use it. So you got your Volquartsen trigger, your Volquartsen trigger spring and plunger. This is your Volquartsen shear and your Volquartsen hammer. So let's go ahead and get started here. Take your sear spring. It's going to go in the firearm like this. It's going to sit into this little notch right here. Just like that. What I like to do, you're going to get your smallest pin. You have 3 pins, and the smallest diameter is the one you want. The pins, all of them have a little ridge, which is what that spring leg catches into and holds it into place. What you want to do is, let me show you from this side here, from the left side of the gun, put this in the lower pinhole and then maneuver it into the coils of this spring here. Just like that. Take your Volquartsen sear, which is more polished than the other, than your original factory. It's going to come in this direction in the firearm. It needs to go behind this little spring right here, because that spring is going to power it and advance it to the rear. You want to just set it into place here. Try not to mar up the surface of the sear with your pliers. And then once you got it in place, push this pin until it goes all the way through. This spring leg here is going to catch into that little notch and hold it in place. Alright, your next thing you're going to do, you got 2 pins left. You've got one with a very deep ridge, and you've got one with a shallower ridge closer to the edge. The one with the shallower ridge closer to the edge is the one you want. You're going to put it in from the left side of the gun. You're going to push it, and it's going to be the path is going to be obstructed by that little spring leg. You're going to push that spring leg towards the rear of the firearm, and then I would just push your pin in just far enough to catch that. So, let's see if I can adjust the light here to give you a better look at it. And that's what that needs to look like. This next step is kind of a bear, and this is the thing that Nuttin' Fancy was struggling with in his video. What you need to accomplish is have this sear pushed forward. Since it's being powered towards the rear, it's got to be pushed forward. The tip of this sear here has to catch into this little notch here. So the spring detent is going to want to fall out. That's your first problem. You want to hold that in place. Move your sear into place. I'm going to try and do this so you can see a little bit of what I'm doing, but it's extremely difficult to do in and of itself, much less with trying to look through a viewfinder. Okay, so you can see here that I have that sear captured into my safety, but my safety is in this fire position, and that's not going to line up this hole here, right here. That's not going to line that up with this pin. So I'm going to have to hold this. I need to hold the safety against the wall of the frame and hold it downward so it's capturing that sear, and I'm going to have to move this selector into fire like that, and then I should be able to push this pin in like that and thread it. Once you have that threaded like that, it's going to be a cakewalk from here. So that is what it needs to look like when you're to this point. You can see that the sear is captured into this safety, and then I have this pin threaded into the safety. You want to back it off a little bit so that you can give yourself as much space between this safety and the other side of this wall here so you can maneuver everything into position. Next, we're going to put the trigger in. Trigger has a travel screw and a pre-travel screw, and for time's sake I have already done that. You want to just degrease the threads, put some blue Loctite on it, thread them up a little bit. Once you get it installed, you can adjust it after that. You've got your trigger spring, you got your trigger spring plunger, get your trigger bar here, set that aside like that. Alright, what you want to do is take your last pin here with the groove with the groove out here to the outside. Take it in from the right. Got that little spring leg obstructing its path. You want to push that downwards, just like that. You want to back it off so that you leave enough room to put your trigger in. Go ahead and drop your trigger into place here. And what I find helps is if you take a small punch and just guide everything, roll it around a little bit so you can get that pin to line up with everything. Okay, and that is what that is all going to look like. Now let's go ahead and get your, alright, you want to get your Volquartsen hammer and your Volquartsen Mark II hammer bushing. Put it in from the right hand side, like that. It's going to set into place like this. You want it to lay down flat like that. Go ahead and line everything up. You want that little finger to be dangling back in here like that. Let's go ahead and find sometimes it does help to put it into safe at this point. That allows that trigger bar some motion. You can line up your holes here and just go ahead and push this pin until you hear that spring leg capture into place. And there you go. Now it's all put back together. Let's go ahead and reassemble it. Make sure that we have it assembled correctly. Give this a couple taps here. Put our bolt in. Pull the trigger and advance the hammer forward. Just like that. That finger dangle downwards. Push that in. Okay, so let's give it a couple function tests. The bolt operates just fine. Safety's fine. Let's make sure that the bolt catch works. Alright. So let's go ahead and put it on fire without a magazine in. We're all good. Thanks for checking out my video. Shout out to Nut and Fancy for posting the first video. Thanks for... And... oh, that sucks.